John has very kindly given you the link to our YouTube channel. It was in today's email of 7:30 this morning, so you can find the link there. And we always record and post our monthly trail talks. So as John explained so beautifully, we have these trail talks every month as a means of coming together as the Sierra Club community chapter during the pandemic. We're hoping to be back perhaps after July once the National Sierra Club hierarchy decides that it's clear for us to have people outings. But I think we will still continue to have these Zoom meetings because I think like much of business in America and the way we do things, it's handy. It's handy to do this. And I think we'll have a combination of our physical outings and our Zoom outings. As you may know, our past trail talks have included nearby nature, winter night sky, snowshoeing 101, desert hiking essentials, and birding in the IE. So we've really been focusing on local nature skills, and the like. Now, as John mentioned, our upcoming talks will include next month's history of Wrightwood's Bighorn Mine with our own Norm Bossum. The next one will be car camping basics, and Karla has kindly offered to take the helm on that. And then John will be presenting, following that, favorite day hikes in Yosemite National Park. And then into the summer, we'll be having David Money Harris in the classic hiking guide, Trails of the Angeles, which put out a new edition. And into the early fall, we'll have a trail talk on backpacking for beginners. This month's trail talk is...
Hey, Julianne, there's been 7 or 8 people that have said they can't hear you, and I can't hear you either. Is there anything you can do about your audio? We can't hear what you're talking about.
Oh, not at all?
Barely. I can hear little mumbles.
Oh boy. I'll try to talk much slower. I must have an unstable internet connection.
When you turn your face away from the screen, it seems to get quieter. I don't know if you have a directive microphone. Thank you.
That could well be. Can you hear me now?
Better.
Everybody should turn their volume up. She's loud and clear on my computer, but I have my volume up.
Okay. I'll try to be right here faced forward. I want to introduce our presenter, Karla Kellems. Karla is the outings chair of the Sierra Club San Gorgonio Chapter's Mountains Group and has been an outings leader for 7 years. A self-described wildflower enthusiast, Karla has led hikes specifically designed as flower walks throughout the San Bernardino Mountains. She has been inspired by her husband, Kevin Kellems, who is a biologist and co-author of the book, Wildflowers of the San Bernardino Mountains. And I have the book. It is a delightful book. I keep it in my pack. Karla has also led innumerable hikes, car camps, backpacking trips, and snowshoeing trips throughout Southern California. She's an active committee member for the San Gorgonio Chapter's annual leadership training course at the Keller Ski Hut, proctoring one of the 2 legendary cross-country map and compass exercises. John does the other one. He is also one of the Sierra Club's caretakers of the historic Keller Ski Hut in Snow Valley. Karla is one of the founding committee members of the Trail Talk series. In her day job, she is the director of outreach for the San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust. She lives with her husband, Kevin, and their son, Koa, in Green Valley Lake. So with that, Karla, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Wow, that was a great introduction. I did want to point out that I am a flower enthusiast, which means I'm not an expert. And I'm sure there might be a few of you experts or what we call plant nerds on the Zoom. So I encourage you, those of you that do know scientific names, when I do come upon a plant or a flower, and I will refer to the flowers as their common names. But if I come across one that has a common name that you recognize and you know the scientific name, go ahead and throw it in the chat so that everybody can see it. So we're going to start here with the wildflowers, the San Bernardino Mountains. And I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I've got probably the 3 most common flowers that we see up here on the mountains here in my first photo. And those of you who know those 3 flowers, you get an A+ already on the quiz. You can go ahead and sign out. You don't have to watch the rest of my presentation, not really. But we're going to talk about the 3 most common flowers, which you'll see my cursor circling the purple one there. That is the lupine. Some people call it the lupin, but there are many different types of lupin or lupine, depending on how you like to pronounce it. They have a radiant of colors from white to very deep purple color. And there's many different types. And we have several of those types on the mountain. The middle flower here is the red. Most people know it as the paintbrush, or some people like to refer to it as an Indian paintbrush. Little fun fact about the paintbrush, it's a hemiparasite. It does photosynthesize. As you can see, it's got some green in its leaves. But it also sequesters nutrients from other organisms underneath the soil. And it does rely on pollinators for reproduction. So a little fun fact about those. And then we have the wallflower. The wallflower is, if any of you know what a wallflower is, it's usually somebody who stands alone. Because in many cases, you will see this flower all by itself. But there are cases where you will see it in little groups of, 3 or 4. Tends to be a different variety between the west side of San Bernardino Mountains and the east side, which is the Big Bear area. On the west side, we tend to get this color, which is kind of an orangish color. If you go to Big Bear, they tend to be more yellow. So different varieties. Same with the paintbrush, there's different varieties. But they all have a similar look to them. Okay. I'm trying to get my screen to move on. There we go. There we go. Okay. So what you need when you go out looking for flowers is you need a good reference. It can be an app or a book. Some of the apps that I've known people to use or that I've used myself are the PlantNet app, PlantSnap, or LeafSnap. If you guys are in technology and you want to use technology to identify plants, that's the way to go. For those of you who are kind of old school like myself, there's a couple books out there that I recommend. We have a pocket book called The Wildflowers of the San Bernardino Mountains. And that's kind of a small little reference book. It's very particular to just this area. There's also the book called Flowering Plants of the San Bernardino Mountains by Robert Reed. Or you can go a little more technical and do what I've done, and you can go with the Southern California Mountains Wildflowers book. What I like about this book is all the flowers are categorized by color, which is great because you can see a yellow flower and you can look in the yellow section and try to identify it. Books like this and other bigger reference books, you don't have to go out and buy them. Sometimes you can find them in the libraries. So I recommend search in the library before you go out buying a bunch of flower books, if this is just something you want to do just for fun. Okay, so the first thing when you're going to look for flowers is your drive up the mountain, because you are going to see in the springtime flowers blooming as you're driving up either Highway 330, Highway 18, or Highway 38. So the most common ones you're going to see are right here, which is blooming right now. It's one of the early bloomers. People like to refer to it by its common name of mountain lilac. It's in the buckthorn family. It's a type of ceanothus. And there's also another variation called the whitethorn, which has white flowers. The next one you're going to see here is the yellow, fields of yellow. Okay, most of you know that as a broom, specifically either the Scotch broom or the Spanish broom. And when you're driving, you're not going to know which type it is, because you have to get up nice and close to it to determine which variety it is. So just to kind of let you know, the Scotch broom stems are rigid, whereas the Spanish broom stems are round and smooth. So you'd have to get up close to check it out to know which one it is. Also, the Spanish broom flowers have a nice fragrance to them, whereas the Scotch broom, they don't smell. So the only way to really determine which one it is to pull your car off into a turnout and sniff it and check out its stem structure. It is a non-native invasive species. And then also on your way up, you'll see these beautiful little sunflowers. I could not ID these sunflowers in my book, so I don't know if they're native or non-native. So some of you flower experts out there, go ahead and put it in the chat if you know what type of sunflower this is. It's the sunflower that you see driving up on the 330. So as you're driving up the mountain, you might decide that you want to pull off into a turnout and get a little closer to some of the smaller flowers that you'll see. So one of the common flowers you'll see driving up is the Yorba Santa. And it has a beautiful little clump of white flower structure right there, up there in the corner. Let's see here. And it is an earlier bloomer. And we also have another one that you'll see if you drive up the 18, look up on the sides of the cliffs in the rocks, and you'll see this pale yellowish flower. That's a type of monkey flower. And they tend to bloom around mid-season. And then the red one as well, you'll see up in the crevices of the rock on Highway 18. That is called the fuchsia. And that tends to be a late bloomer later in the season. And then of course, you're gonna see lots of manzanita. And the manzanita has this beautiful whitish pinkish flower structure. So the locations we're going to be looking at today are Strawberry Peak, which is on the west end of the mountain, over there near Twin Peaks. It tends to get a lot more moisture in the form of fog on that side of the mountain. So it tends to be a little more lush. We're also going to look at Little Green Valley, which is kind of in the center between the east end, which is the Big Bear end, and the west end. And that is a riparian area, lots of water in that valley. So we're going to see a lot of more water-loving flowers in that area. And then the last place is going to be on the east end, which is the Big Bear area. We're going to look at the Pebble Plain Ecological Reserve. I've identified these locations as some of the better locations on the mountain to view flowers. But for those of you who have seen really awesome flower areas up here on the mountain, go ahead and put it in the chat where you've seen good flowers. So with any outing, of course, if you are going to do some hiking to look for your flowers, you always want to have your 10 essentials. And we talked about our 10 essentials in the past, so I'm not going to go into detail on those. but you always want to be prepared if you are going to do a little hike. Strawberry Peak is a very short hike. It's about a mile round trip. And it's an easier one to do for those of you that just want to saunder and have a nice meander in the forest. Little Green Valley is a little, I would call more of a moderate hike. It's about 3 miles round trip, and you do have about 400, 500 foot elevation gain. And then the last one is the Pebble Plain Ecological Reserve. And that one can vary depending on what routes you want to take, from an easy mile hike out to the Sawmill Pebble Plain, or a more difficult route going out to the de-vegged area, de-vegged Pebble Plain area. We'll talk about Pebble Plains a little bit later. So let's start with Strawberry Peak. But before I start with Strawberry Peak, are there any questions so far?
Actually, some people have put in information about what nurseries are available to sell native plants. But I don't see any, and so someone asked about that, and people have put the answers in the chat. I don't see any other questions though. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a good comment. And a lot of people want to do nativescape. They want to have natives, especially if they live on the mountain. They want to have natives in their garden. I know me and my husband are always trying to seed natives. Another good resource is the Heaps Peak Arboretum. Every Memorial Day weekend, they have a plant sale. And that is a great place to source out local plants on the mountain. So yeah, that's a very, very good comment. So on Highway 189, as you're driving up Highway 18, you turn onto 189, you will come across the San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust Strawberry Peak Preserve. And like I said, this is an easy 1 mile loop trail. And this is one of the, I would say from the experts that we've been on flower walks with, this is one of the most pristine areas for flowers. So we've got a couple common flowers that really like kind of a wet area is the miner's lettuce. And if you guys can see that the larger whitish flower in there, that is called the baby blue eyes. Now the baby blue eyes comes in a gradient of colors from almost white to a bluish, kind of like a mid-color blue color. And you get different color variations. I don't know what causes that. But it is beautiful to see the color variations. Now the miner's lettuce is edible. The leaf structure, the little lily pad style leaf structure part is the edible part. So it's kind of fun to see those out there. So the next two flowers we see out in at Strawberry Peak are one of my favorite. The purple one at the top there. I like it because it has a cool name. We call it up here the splendid gilia. It's a type of gilia. There are many different types of gilias. This one tends to be very common here on the mountain. Not much of a leaf structure, mostly just stem and flower. And then the yellow flower, which is kind of a globe looking flower with little yellow stars on the end. That one's called the shooting star, which is it's a flower structure is very appropriate for the name that it was, for the common name that it's been given. So here we have the PHACELIA, and there's several types of PHACELIA. Sometimes you'll see them driving up, you'll see the big, dark, almost indigo patches as you're driving up the mountain. Some of those are PHACELIA. They come in a gradient of colors, depending on the type. They come from a very pale purple all the way to like a dark indigo color. They're really beautiful, and they come in little clumps, and they're close to the ground. These ones, they're very pretty. So this one here, you could see just the top, but mostly it's just stem and flower. Not a whole lot of leaf structure on this plant or on this flower. It's called blue dix. And it is, it comes in a gradient of colors, and the flowers on each head can be a different gradient of color. Some of them are almost white, where some of them are kind of a pale purple, a lighter purple color. And one of my favorites on the mountain is the iris. Some people refer to this as the mountain iris or the heartwig iris. There are a couple different variations of irises on the mountain. This one is the most common one that we see. So before I move on to Little Green Valley and what you'll see in the riparian area, are there any questions?
I don't see. Oh, what is the parking situation there?
Yeah.
I think this person is asking about, I don't know, maybe where your last location.
Yeah, so Strawberry Peak Preserve, most of your parking is going to be just off the road, and there's a couple turnouts ahead of Strawberry Peak Preserve and below it and across the street. Unfortunately, there is no parking inside the gated area at this time. But there is plenty of parking. We don't tend to get a crowd there. So you usually have plenty of off-road parking. Good question.
Is a permit required?
No, no permit. This is a San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust Preserve, and all their preserves are open for the public to enjoy. We just ask that you enjoy it respectfully and, pick up your trash.
You don't need that adventure pass parking thing?
No, not for Strawberry Peak Preserve. Adventure pass is not required. There are places on the mountain that do require the adventure pass, and usually those places are places that have amenities like bathrooms and trash receptacles and trailhead, nice trailhead parking. Like the Heaps Peak Arboretum would be one of those locations, but not any of the locations that I'm talking about. None of the locations I'm talking about require an adventure pass.
Okay, I think that's all the questions. We had some more postings about nurseries.
Okay, that's good. No, this is the time of season to get your flowers in your garden. So this is definitely the time to be thinking about that. So we're going to move right into Little Green Valley. Now the trailhead for Little Green Valley, for those of you who drive up either on the 18 or the 330, you take Highway 18 to Snow Valley. Right across the street from Snow Valley is a establishment called the Rim Nordic. And they do mountain biking and snowshoeing and cross-country skiing. Right next to Rim Nordic is the trailhead, and you'll see the little sign says Little Green Valley Trailhead. And there's a dirt parking lot, no amenities, just a dirt parking lot. And then the trail starts from there. It heads up, and you do have a little bit of a climb. It's about 1.5 miles to the Little Green Valley itself. And like I said, there is a 300 to 400 foot elevation climb. It's not too strenuous, but something you definitely want to be prepared for, especially if you're coming up here in the summer. Now, Little Green Valley, I forgot to mention that Strawberry Peak, that is a good place to go to in June. We tend to lead flower hikes there early to mid-June. Now, Little Green Valley, we're up a little bit higher elevation. So that means the flowering plants don't flower until a little bit later in the season. Little Green Valley is a good place to go in July. July is a good time to see the flowers in Little Green Valley. So as you're hiking up the trail to Little Green Valley, some of the plants that you will see are penstemons. Now there's many different varieties of penstemons. These are the most common ones we see here in the mountains. The purple one is called people call it the bearded tongue penstemon or the Grinnell's bearded tongue penstemon. It tends to be very common. This type of penstemon grows just rapidly and all over the place in my yard, which I absolutely love. And then you have the reddish color one that's just fairly common, also grows in my yard. People refer to that as the firecracker penstemon or even the Eaton's firecracker penstemon. So those are the most common ones that I see in this area. And I actually live in the Little Green Valley. I live in Green Valley Lake, so I live very close to Little Green Valley. So as you're cruising up the trail, you will most likely see some aster. Aster is very, very common up here. Some people refer to it as the San Bernardino Mountain aster or the West Mountain aster. It tends to be in a gradient of colors as well. Sometimes it could be a white and or it can be a purple color. And the one up there in the corner is a coyote mint is what we've referred to it. And it tends to have kind of a small flower structure with little purple blooms at the end. So the next plant, we have a lot up here. Many of you probably have seen this one. This one was called the rabbit brush and tends to like the drier slopes, drier areas. And it tends to be a late bloomer. So you don't see it. It won't be one of the first things to bloom. You'll see it later in the season. So let's look at what you'll find once you get up to Little Green Valley, what you'll find in the riparian area. So the little puff white balls, little cotton, looks like a series of little cotton balls. That is called the Ranger's buttons. One of my favorite flowers. Don't see it too often, but one of the places that I do see it is in Little Green Valley. We also have down below, you see kind of an orangish red flower, which is also one of my favorites. It tends to really like the riparian wet areas. It's called the columbine. Several different types of columbines. This one is the one that I see most commonly. One of my son's favorite flowers is down there in the lower corner, the yellow flower called the yellow salsify. And the reason why he likes this one is it turns into like a dandelion puff, like a huge dandelion puff, and he likes to go up to him and blow on it so that all the seeds float all over the place. He absolutely loves that. And then up on the top, the yellow flower up there is the goldenrod, which is another common flower. That one is also common on the west end. You might see that one as well in Twin Peaks in the Strawberry Peak Preserve area. Okay, moving on to more riparian flowers. Now, riparian area is just a wonderful area. You got a lot of biodiversity of flowers in these riparian areas. So you'll see kind of like a corn stalk in the lower corner. That one is called the corn lily. And right above that little corn stalk leaf structure, the top picture there shows what the corn lily looks like when it's in full bloom. And it is rather large. It can be up to like 10 feet tall. It's very tall. Down in the lower middle, you see a purple flower. That's called a larkspur. There's many different types of larkspurs. This is the one we probably most commonly see is a purple colored larkspur in the riparian area. Right above the larkspur is people refer to that as the common name of, did I write it down? It's a type of oh, here it is, cranesbill. One we see, but you have to look for it because it is small and it's in the geranium family. Now in the lower corner there, the yellow flower, many of you might recognize that as a type of lily. That is called a lemon lily. and it's very beautiful, and it's a rather large flower. It's very, very prominent. And then above that is one of my favorites. It's in the sunflower family. I just like it because it has a really cool common name. It's called the Bigelow's sneeze weed. So I just like saying the name. So before we move on to the Pebble Plain Ecological Reserve on the east side of the mountain in the Big Bear area, I can take a couple questions. Were there any questions in the chat?
There was a comment from Orchid to everyone that said salsify is not native.
Oh, I did not know that because yeah, it's in my book. So I guess I assume every plant that's in my book is native. So thank you for pointing that out, Orchid. That's good to know. It is a very unique looking flower. But
So
yeah.
there also is a question about, do any of these flowers have scent or fragrance?
Yeah, that's where you just kind of jump in with your nose. I mentioned the broom. One of the brooms, I believe it is the Spanish broom, has a fragrant. Some of the lupines, there's a lupine type called the grape soda lupine. And if you get your nose down into it and smell it, it smells like grape soda. So yeah, that's one of those fun things about going out and looking for flowers, is getting up nice and close and smelling them and looking at their structure, looking at their stems, their leaves, their petals, and just kind of getting up and close with them and checking them out. But yes, there are quite a few of the flowers up here do have beautiful smells. I also mentioned at the very beginning the mountain lilac that also has a nice smell. So yeah, there's quite a few flowers that have smell, and I recommend checking them out if you're into.
Here's another question. What do you recommend as easy native plants to grow? And do you have some favorite pollinators for Southern California?
Ooh, that's a good question. It depends on where you live. Now up here, if you live on the mountain, a good pollinator plant would be, I know the Forest Service has been really promoting planting milkweed. And milkweed is a pollinator attractor for the monarch butterfly. Really, I think any native flower would attract pollinators. So I definitely recommend natives. And what was the second part of that question, John?
Well, the first part was an easy native plant to grow. The second part was about pollinators.
Oh, okay, an easy plant to grow. I think you just kind of have to look at where you are and just kind of go out, especially if you're on the mountain, go out into areas that are open and see what's popping up and kind of identify what may grow in your area. Where I live in Green Valley Lake, one of the things that grows very, very well here at my house are the penstemons. And some of the penstemons are very easy to grow. Some of the fuchsias are easy to grow, but it really depends on where you live. So depends on the climate. I live in a drier area, so the penstemons tend to be a good habitat for them. But very good questions, guys.
Yeah, there was another question about Forest Service. Why do they recommend milkweed? And a bunch of people chimed in because monarchs love it and they are in decline.
Yes, that is the reason why. It's the Forest Service has a program called the Green Thumbs. Anybody interested in doing planting and restoration work, go ahead and go online. You could look up the Green Thumbs for the Forest Service. And they do a lot of restoration projects where they grow a lot of plants that will help with the pollinators. One of the other plants they like to grow is the different types of buckwheat, and also the milkweed, and rabbit brush. Rabbit brush is also another one. Very good questions, guys. Okay, So we'll go ahead and move on to Pebble Plain Ecological Reserve. Just so you know, in its name, Pebble Plain, you kind of get the idea that it's probably a lot of little pebbles all over the place. The soils are very different in this area. It's kind of an area where the pebbles had come up to the surface in the last ice age during the melt, and has changed the composition of the soil where it's not very good soil for trees to grow. But there are some very special flowers that are in pebble plains, and only in pebble plains, and they grow in this type of habitat. The soil tends to be more of a clayish type soil, and they just, these particular flowers and plants are, thrive in this environment. Now, you guys, if you see my picture, you will see a couple different colors in there. You'll see a yellow flower and you'll see a purple flower. One of those flowers is called the Douglas violet. The other one is what is commonly referred to is the parish's rock crest. Both absolutely love the Pebble Plain habitat. And can any of you, I don't know, I can't really do a raise a hand thing, but think about which one do you think is the Douglas violet? Is it the yellow one or the purple one? And which one is the rock crest? Is it the yellow or the purple? Because you might be surprised with the name. Douglas violet, I think of something that's purple. But in this situation, it is not purple. It is not the purple flower. It is the yellow flower. And the rock crest, is the purple flower. So just kind of a fun little fact if you're out on the Pebble Plain. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Pebble Plain Ecological Reserve. And it is managed by a collective. Mainly the San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust owns most of the property. There is an inholding of U.S. Forest Service land called the Sawmill Pebble Plain area. And just to kind of give an idea of how to get there, it is in the Moon Ridge area. So any of you that have gone to Snow Summit or Bear Mountain or to the Moon Ridge Zoo, I think they call it something different now. There's a housing community up above that area. And there's a road called the Villa Grove Avenue. And if you look at Villa Grove Avenue, you go to the very end of Villa Grove Avenue, and I'm going to try to get my cursor to show up here so I can show you on the map where it is. Where is my cursor? I don't know where it is. Oh, there it is. Okay. So here's Villa Grove Avenue, and it goes all the way nice. It loops all over the place, but it technically ends right at the dead end, right here at the T, which is the trailhead. And there's a trail that goes to the Sawmill Pebble Plain. There's also the Villa Grove Pebble Plain as well. And so there's a half-mile trail here. There's another trail that goes to the Sawmill Pebble Plain. And then there's some connector trails from trailheads from the Moon Ridge community that connect to what we call our backbone trail right here. And then you can connect it all the way over to what people know as the Sugarloaf community. And this area here is the Sugarloaf community. Now, the reason why the Pebble Plain Ecological Preserve is so important is because there are plants in this area here that only show up in this area. And they only exist in the Pebble Plain, the Big Bear Pebble Plain areas. And those are some of these plants we're going to talk about a little bit later. The Bear Valley Sandwort, the Southern Mountain Buckwheat, also some people refer to it as the Kennedy's Buckwheat, and then the Ash Gray Indian Paintbrush. So let's talk about some of the things you'll see on the trails at the Pebble Plain Ecological Reserve. One of my favorite flowers to see is the Mariposa lily. It is beautiful. flower, it's got a 3-leaf or 3-petal structure. Comes in different gradients of colors, pinks, purples, and whites. There are many different types of Mariposa lilies. So that's where your little ID book comes in handy. These are just a couple that I snapped pictures of while I was out there. But there are many different types of Mariposa lilies. Oops. So we have the next one you'll see is the PHLOX. And this is another type of phlox that grows really only in the Big Bear Valley area. And it's a really pretty, you get these clumps of little flowers, and some of them come in a different, in each clump you'll get gradients of color. Some will look white, some will look more purple. But phlox, you'll see little clumps, and they're very pretty. I talked about the Douglas violet before, and there is an up-close picture of the yellow Douglas violet. I heard I don't know if it's a true story, but I heard that the reason why they call it the Douglas violet is because bees see colors differently than we do. And that they may be attracted to the Douglas violet because it is a color that they may associate with more of a purplish color. When we see yellow, they may see purple. I don't know if that's true, but it's kind of a fun story to tell. So I talked about some endangered species that are on the Pebble Plain, that are only on the Pebble Plain and nowhere else. There's the gray ash paintbrush, Kennedy's buckwheat, and the sandwort, Big Bear Valley sandwort. And these are endangered. So if you are out on the Pebble Plain, please be careful where you're stepping. Make sure you stay on the trails. We do want to, the whole reason why it's an ecological preserve is because we want to protect these species that are only in this area, and they exist nowhere else except for the Big Bear Pebble Plain area. So before I move on, are there any questions?
Yeah, there was a question. When do you go to the Pebble Plains?
Yeah, that is a good question. The Pebble Plain Ecological Preserve is at higher elevation. And a good time to go would be like Little Green Valley, probably in late June, early July, even into even late July, depending on how late our spring season is up here. So those are, because they are higher elevation, spring tends to happen later in the year. So Strawberry Peak, good time to go is June. Green Valley, Little Green Valley, and Pebble Plain Ecological Reserve, good time to go is July. Very good question.
Okay, and Julianne asked, do these plants have any sort of California protected status?
Yes. The 3 plants that I showed you, and those are these 3, they are endangered. That is there on the highest protection level that they can be.
And someone wanted to know, are conditions posted anywhere so you know if the flowers are out yet?
That is a good question. They actually, if you go online, there are, there's like the California Flower Watch, I think it's called, where they do post very popular locations like Antelope Valley for the poppies, and other locations like that, where it's like a flower mecca. As far as the San Bernardino Mountains, no. There's not a website you can go to know if the flowers are out yet. So it might be one of those things where you might have to visit a couple times during the season. Maybe the first time they're not quite out yet, second time they're in full bloomage. And you have to understand that a lot of these flowers don't bloom all at the same time. Some are early bloomers, some bloom right when they're supposed to, and some are late bloomers like the fuchsia. You may not get all the flowers blooming all at once. So you may have to go at different times during the spring, early, mid, and late, to get to see some of these flowers bloom. Good questions.
I think that's it.
Okay. So I'm gonna kind of give some special mention to a couple other plants. This here is also an endangered species, only located in the Big Bear Valley area, mostly in meadow areas near Big Bear Lake. One of the places you can see this flower is at Metcalf Meadow. And this is called the birdfoot checker bloom. And those of you who do not know where Metcalf Meadow is, some of you may be familiar with where the old drive-in movie theater used to be in Big Bear. That is called Metcalf Meadow. And that is where this flower blooms. It blooms nowhere else but the Big Bear Valley area, especially in the wetter areas like meadows. And it is also an endangered flower. And then my last plant here, this one is one of my favorites. You tend to see it early in the season, sometimes very early spring. Sometimes you'll see it popping out of snow. And this is what people commonly refer to as a snow plant. While it looks beautiful like a flower, it's technically not. There's other types of plants like this. There's another one called pine drop, but it does not photosynthesize. It actually derives all its nutrients from particular species of fungus, which in turn derives its nutrition from conifer roots. So it's a very unique plant. It's like a fungus, but it's not a fungus. It's one of those very, very special plants that we see early in the spring. And sometimes you see them popping up. Most of the time you see them popping up by themselves. And sometimes you see them kind of in a fairy circle where you'll see kind of a circle of them popping up. And I've seen as many as 10 or 12 of them popping up in kind of a circle formation. So this is one of my favorite, not a flower, but it is beautiful. It is a plant, and it's one of my favorites. So I thank you, everybody. That is the end of my show. Do we have any last questions?
And actually, at this point, if somebody wants to unmute and state something verbally, they could do that.
I have a question, Karla, it's Julianne. Is the San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust leading any organized walks this season, especially maybe after 4th of July or so? Are you planning to do any walks?
Yeah, that is a very good question. We do have to follow state guidelines as far as COVID goes. Right now there is nothing planned, but thank you for bringing that up, because I did want to show a short video. You guys noticed that two of the locations that are known for on the mountain that are known for flower viewing are actually preserves that are managed by the San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust. And that would be the Strawberry Peak Preserve and the Pebble Plain Ecological Reserve. So I did want to show a video, and I think I have it queued up here. Let's see here. Hopefully it'll work. And there is a Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, and hopefully you can, let me push play and hopefully we'll be able to hear it.
The San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust purchases legendary landscapes that would otherwise be turned into housing tracts, lands of great natural beauty that give shelter for mountain wildlife, where ideal opportunities exist for public hiking trails and especially for getting children into the great outdoors.
That's the Pebble
The
Plain
unique
Ecological
Pebble
Reserve.
Plain habitat of Big Bear Valley is one example. Here, small plains of rare Pleistocene-era plant communities still survive today, being found only in Big Bear and nowhere else in the world. The Land Trust is working hard to fill critical ownership gaps in the public forest lands of the beautiful San Bernardino National Forest. Another magnificent example is scenic Coyote Rock, located on the forested slopes behind the Children's Forest Visitor Center on Highway 18 in Running Springs. A lofty vista point provides a commanding view of the surrounding forests. The understaffed Forest Service can no longer adequately manage this one-time proud national forest by itself and is unable to rescue the many stranded private lands that are so important to wildlife survival without help from organizations like the Land Trust. Recently rescued is the last and best natural forest landscape in Lake Arrowhead, which was threatened by development. It is now being protected with the aim of restoring it as a wildland nature park. The future of the forest depends on people like you, who are willing to support us in saving century-old landscapes like the Strawberry Peak parcel with its noble trees and grand vistas of the San Bernardino Valley. This site is now being used to give school children the excitement and experience of venturing out into the forest. There are many other awe-inspiring landscapes like these waiting for you to help save them from the bulldozers and housing tracts. Please consider making a generous donation today to the San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust to protect the future of more lands like these.
Okay, another
Okay.
question. What is the name of the meadow where the birdfoot checker bloom is found?
Yes, good question. It's called Metcalf Meadow. And like I mentioned before, it used to be the location of the old drive-in movie theater that was in Big Bear back in the days. So many people know it as that area. As you're coming into Big Bear, right before you get to the Big Bear Civic Center, it is the meadow that is on, it's the whole meadow on both sides of the road. And it's right before the Civic Center in Big Bear.
Now, I'd like to say something. We had some very knowledgeable posts in the chat section. And if you would like to save that, if down at the bottom of the chat section, there's 3 little dots. If you click on it, at the top, it says save the chat. And that way you can save those comments that are in the chat section. And there's a lot of links in there and answering the questions and good information.
Yeah, very good information. I'm actually looking at the chat right now. Unfortunately, I can't view the chat when I'm giving my presentation, when I'm on share screen, but I get a chance to look at it now. And I do want to point out that I believe we have tomorrow is Earth Day. So I want to encourage all of you to get out into nature tomorrow, enjoy nature. And maybe bring a little sack with you so you could pick up some trash along the way or do something good for Mother Earth. Go recycle something, do something good for Earth Day. And I'm looking at the chat again.
There's another thing in the chat that said how you could volunteer with that one organization. I'm trying to find it. Oh yeah, Green Thumbs. There's a link. They have volunteer dates.
They do, yeah. Unfortunately, due to COVID and the state regulations, they haven't been able to meet. But you can go onto the U.S. Forest Service website in San Bernardino, and you can look up, do a search for Green Thumbs, and you can get on their email list. I'm on their email list, so I get notifications when they do restoration projects, and you can sign up to volunteer. It's a really fun program. My whole family has participated, even my son, my 8-year-old son. So he enjoys it as well. But I also saw a question in the chat, where do we see the snow plants? That's a very good question. When you're out hiking, they tend to like, you know how they mentioned that they kind of attach themselves to the conifers and they derive their nutrients from the conifers. You'll see them under like Jeffrey pines and sugar pines, and you'll see them popping up through the pine needles. So if there's a real area where there's a lot of conifers, just kind of look around. They're pretty obvious because they're very bright red, kind of a bright red pinkish color. So, you know, look around. Those are the areas where you will find the snow plant.
When you mentioned those endangered plants, I missed the third one. Would you read their names again?
Okay, so the endangered plants, we have the ash gray paintbrush is one of them. The buckwheat, which is the Kennedy's mountain buckwheat, or some people refer to it as Southern California mountain buckwheat. And there's also the Bear Valley sandwort. And that might have been the Bear Valley sandwort, might have been the one that you missed. And that one's got and these are micro plants. These are very small, very hard to see. You have to get up real close to see them. The sandwort is kind of a white flower with a little black or brown speckles on it. It's really pretty, but very small.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that this was like a lovely talk and super informative, and thank you so much. And I posted some of the things for like the volunteering aspect, if anyone's interested in getting involved in like native planting or even just removing an invasive species. I know like COVID is happening right now, and there's all the regulations, but you can join their different lists and just be informed of ways to kind of support the causes. And the cool thing right now is for like Earth Day and Earth Action Week, there's some things that you can just do individually or with your family, so you don't have to be in other groups. And they have like tree planting where you can like get your own little trees, or you can do that. There's a thing for anyone who likes hashtags, or trash tag is actually a thing for certain generations. If you want to use that, you can do the trash tag challenge. And I'm talking about the Sustainable Claremont organization. I know that there was a few others that I mentioned with Karla. I think you mentioned the Green Thumbs is an excellent one too, but there's so many things locally that we can get involved in, and I love it. And I just wanted to recommend it because you all are passionate, I can tell as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. I noticed that you did post a lot of links, which is great. Thank you for doing that, because that definitely helps. There are a lot of, depending on where you live, I know you're not all on the mountain. Depending on where you live, there are a lot of organizations you can get involved with. And there's a lot of fun activities. I'm going to be taking my son out to a treasure hunt around Lake Gregory, the Earth Day treasure hunt that's happening tomorrow here on the mountain. So there's a lot of activities going on for Earth Day. I think the San Bernardino Museum, San Bernardino County Museum, is also doing a virtual Earth Day event. And I believe the San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust, I submitted a bunch of stuff to them. So they're going to be, I think, mentioning the land trust, as well as a lot of other conservation entities. So yeah, thank you for that information, and thanks for posting that. That really helps. Thank you.
I reposted the link to the YouTube channel. which not only lets you see this, and I'll get this one on tonight within a couple hours, but it lets you see all the past trail talk videos so that if you missed any of them, you can view them at your leisure.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff happening tomorrow and all this week for Earth Week and for Earth Day. So I definitely encourage you guys to get out and partake in some of that stuff, even if it's just going to the nursery and getting your favorite native plant or your favorite native tree and planting it in your yard. That is definitely a good thing to do for tomorrow.
I got these free bags from California State Parks Foundation that they sent to me in a kit, along with a face mask and a 23% off coupon on one REI co-op brand item class or tour, and to go out tomorrow and pick up trash on Earth Day.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you, Christine.
It was free.
Yeah. So does anybody else have any more questions? I'm kind of perusing the questions here. I didn't get to the to some of the earlier questions, but if there's, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and that's John. Where did you say you were going to post that link to the past?
I just did it. It's near the bottom of the chat section. Julianne posted it at the beginning. But the thing is, if you logged in after she did it, you wouldn't see it. So I reposted hers, and it's near the bottom. Well, not anymore. It's at 8:03 is when I did it.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I see.
And that's the link for all the videos.
Okay, thank you.
And like I said, tonight's recording will be posted within an hour, hour and a half. It takes a little bit of time, but not too long to get it up there.
Yeah, so any more questions before we close out here?
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciated that.
Yeah, that was just an introduction. That was just a basic level flower talk for those of you who just want to get out and smell and look at the flowers.